Thank you very much. And first of all, let me thank you for the honor and the opportunity to be here. Thank you very much, Bruno, for this invitation and all the help to get here. I'm very happy to be in Split, be able to meet you. Very happy so many people are interested in these questions. I will talk about, I hope, a topic that's exciting to many of you. I have sometimes not so happy perspectives here, but I did the best I can to finish on a positive note or bring some positives here, because this is what I am told by my students and my children, that should be a little bit more positive on the transformation of work. And also I try to bring in from Hungary. As you see, I'm coming from the Corvinus University, Budapest. I'm working at the organizational behavior faculty there. And my colleague is Sister Laura Baritz, and I'm very happy that both of us can be talking here today. We have been working together more than 10 years now in this program, this CATEC program. This is Christian Principles in Economic program that is a cooperation between Sapienza College of Theology, religious orders of Hungary have this college, and the Angelicum of the Dominican order in Rome, and we work together in different educational programs, courses, symposiums or conferences, and we try to do a mission towards people bridging together economic perspectives and theological perspective, and we've reached, I hope, quite a lot of people in Hungary, and they are very happy if we can make it as much international as possible. So great to be able to develop this relationship towards Croatia and Split. And I tried to bring in some good examples from Hungary. Two good examples from Hungary, another one from the Philippines, which I fall in love when I was able to see that. But I don't mean these examples as just perfect examples that you should learn from. Certainly there's a lot of elements you can learn from, but I'm also thankful for the opportunity to be here, because as I was preparing for this lecture, I already have got a lot of good ideas what we could improve about this back home in Hungary. So there is this saying, if you give or help somebody like in a lecture, that's also a step for you on your own journey. So I'm already got my reward for this lecture by getting some good ideas. And if you have any questions, I would be more than happy to answer in the end. It would be really nice to have a little discussion. I've started to put here with a little intention of provocation, like nice form of provocation, a university kind of picture, because I assume many of you work at a university, are in strong relationship with universities, have the profession of being a teacher. This is not, what I'm talking about is not just an academic question, but it's a very personal question. For example, what's going to happen with the job of a university professor and a teacher in 10 years, in 20 years? So this is not going to be my presentation, it's just a little, thinking in the beginning to raise curiosity. I sometimes ask my students whether they can tell me anything that professors can do better than an advanced artificial intelligence that's already existing today. And we get into a little debate around it, and I have to tell you, there's not many things. There's really not a lot of things that we can still do much better than an artificial intelligence today. So I think we really have to seriously, and it's our responsibility as Catholics to think about the future, for example, of work of teachers and professors. But I'm going to talk about more general topics here, but I continue with another little picture of provocation, maybe this time for those of you who have children, boys, girls, and the question about are we really moving beyond work as we know it today? If some of you, I had the chance to talk to you in the little break we had, are working in areas which are connected to this, so you are probably familiar with a lot of books coming out on this topic recently. Every year half a dozen of book comes out about the future of work or going beyond work and what's going to happen with work, and we have a lot of research on this, and there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of insecurities about what's going to happen. I have children, and I look at what they are doing, and I don't say that I'm 100% positive. So what I try to put here, what are our little boys are going to do? Are they going to become YouTubers, streaming their online gaming? Is that going to be their job? What are our girls going to be? Are they going to be Instagram stars, sharing their breakfasts and their cooking? This is big, this is growing, but is this really the future, or some version of this the future? Is this really, or this kind of activities, are they really able to provide many, maybe a few people, yes, but many people a source of happiness? Is this sufficient for human beings? There are very challenging questions ahead, and I think I was also very thankful to hear your presentations before mine, because I'm not a theologian, so my background is not as strong in theology. That's why I try to learn from those of you who are theologians, and you have very solid framework and roots in this topic, because I think this is probably the best we can use to answer these kind of questions, and we are responsible for that as well. And just a few ideas trying to go beyond these kind of pictures that we've seen before is certainly this idea that I think in Bruno's presentation I've seen coming up repeatedly, although unfortunately my Croatian is practically non-existent, so I couldn't really get the whole understanding, but from the slides, this importance for the transcendence, that this is very important, the spiritual nature of man and the search for meaning, the desire for transcendence. Without this, without the central, essential truth of this, we are not going to be able to answer that question. So that's why society, the world in large, needs us like yeast to be able to answer this question about the future of work. And we have a lot of knowledge that is clear to us from the Bible, from the social doctrine of the church, that thanks to people like you have developed over the years. We know that work is done by the whole person, body and soul. We need to see that it needs to be reconciled with the deeper dimensions of our self-awareness. We know that it needs to be connected to our beliefs and actions, and this is really essential to bring the whole existence of a human being to the fullness through work. And I don't want to get into the details with the theology, but just a few ideas, because I want to talk about work and some good practices around the future of work. As Catholics, as Christians, we certainly can start looking at scripture, like many of you used also passages from the scripture about work, and maybe this is definitely not going to be very new for most of you, but maybe it's good to repeat a few major key ideas here. For me, it's always a strengthening somehow how God Himself is showing us to be a craftsman, someone who is shaping us when we are created. This is not something ugly for Him or dishonoring for Him to show Himself like that, and we should be an image of Him. So this is a very positive, high form that God gives to work. And what I also feel very encouraged by is our call to be a co-worker. Basically, our existence is a call to be a co-worker. He wants people to work together with Him. He's not a boss. He wants us to be colleagues. Yeah? Come work with me, He says to us. Work in the creation with us. And this is very important for us also, if you look chronologically what's happening in Genesis, that work is fundamentally good. We are called to be co-workers, and the negativity that we all experience in work comes because of sin. Only after the fall of Adam is the punishment that all our work is together with sweating and all these stressful things which I research at the university. This is because of our sins. If if we are saved by Jesus Christ, it doesn't have to be like that. The social doctrine of the church is incredibly powerful in the area of work as well. There's so much incredibly important contributions. Obviously, we have to, from our lifetime, we have to highlight Saint Pope John Paul II, who has been writing on work very extensively. And what is very important, and this is going to be related to one of my examples that I would like to share, is that work is also a duty, an obligation, and it's necessary. So it's not a nice to have. It's really an essential. We cannot separate work from our human existence as it was meant to be by God. The other really strong point, which I love to point out, because it's so clear in the teaching of the Saint Pope, and it's almost in my field when I teach and I have the university textbooks, this is hardly discussed. This idea of the subjective dimension of work over the objective dimension of work. What does it mean? In a nutshell, it means basically when we talk in management about efficiency at work and how to organize work and what is the outcome of the work. Is it good? That's the objective dimension of work. And it's very important. Nobody's saying it's not important, but hardly anybody is talking about the importance of the subjective dimension of work. That we need work because this is what fulfills the human existence. And this is hardly mentioned in a state university, the subjective dimension of work, and Catholic social teaching doesn't just mention it, but the Pope says that actually this is more important than the objective. So the reason why we have work is for man. It's not for man that we have. It's not for work that we have man. So the primary dimension, the most important dimension, is the subjective dimension. We have work so that it fulfills the calling of the human existence. So that's very important and largely neglected in the management field, in the regular state universities. I think this is something that we can really contribute greatly with, and I will of course show you a few theories that gain increasingly attention and maybe even get to the mainstream, which kind of reflect this area as well. So do you still hear me? I try not to destroy the equipment. Okay. So this is going to be the dark side. I'm going to talk about a little bit of what's happening in the world of work. Some people are very pessimistic. Some people are very optimistic about the future of work. I probably put it in this way. I'm pessimistic about what's happening in the world, but I'm optimistic that human beings created by God can make a difference. The world is not going to be going in the right direction on its own. Only if we work together with God and take our cross and do something about it, only then it's going to be possible to do something good about this. So what are some major trends? I don't have much time to get into that, but these are all very, very interesting topics. I tried with a soft one, but very important one. A lot of people, we have lots of research, are struggling with finding meaning in work. Okay, they don't find their existence and their work meaningful. I used to work in a big corporation. I struggled with that. I didn't find it meaningful. I have a good friend who is working now in a global position. I just had a cafe with him like 2 days ago. Very nice salary and everything. He finds his work completely useless and meaningless. Yeah, very nice, huge salary, completely meaningless. A lot of people struggle with that in high positions. But I have here Richard Sennett as a key author. If you're interested to read some of his books, just very quickly an example, which he's an older professor of London School of Economics, and he has a great example of a bakery that he was lucky enough to research some decades apart from each other. I think it was in New York. And he was talking about how these bakers, let's say 30 or 40 years ago, they were really craftsmen. They knew how to bake bread. They were kind of happy and proud of that. And they had the knowledge, they had the skills. They had the community. I think it was Greek bakers who were working together for tens of years. And it was really a happy existence. And when he went back to the same bakery 20 years later, I think, he found this place to be filled with machines in which people just push buttons, right? And it was completely lack of meaning and craftsmanship. These were just people pushing buttons. There were no bakers anymore. There was no community. People stayed there a few months and then they left. And maybe just a part of the anecdote is when one machine broke down, they were so much incapable to do anything that they had to wait like 2 hours. Everybody just sit and wait because they couldn't do anything. And a repair person had to come and fix it, right? So we are really going through a period when lots of meaning is lost in jobs, and people don't really have a good chance to build their identity and meaning for life from their work. It's increasingly getting more deep. But just briefly mentioning professors and university lecturers, also I think there is a problem here developing. Not so much in Hungary, I'm happy about this, but in the Western world, you increasingly hear about public speakers and university professors who say they will not go to a university anymore because they just cannot say what they really think, okay? So they can go ahead and say this person A says this, but they don't dare to say anymore their opinion because it's so much controlled. So that's also for them meaningless. Why should I a university professor if I cannot say anymore my opinion? It's not meaningful anymore. So that's, again, I think it's a major problem. All of these would be worth it to talk deeply about. One of my colleagues at the university has been writing his PhD on commitment, and it's an interesting topic. What I just want to mention, because many of you are maybe a bit younger here, and you might have heard a lot of criticism. My generation, or even a little bit older generations, they like to criticize young people that they are hopping from one job to the other. They are not loyal, they are not committed anymore. But I usually say to my students, I don't think you should feel very bad about that. It's this kind of game was not started by the young people, okay? This was started by the companies. The companies were the first ones who have decided to just, lay off people whenever they wanted, right? So the commitment from the side of corporations has vanished. They did not promise employees anything. Just anything uncomfortable happened, immediately layoffs, getting rid of people. So that was, I think, my assumption is that this is a reciprocal development. If companies behave like it, why would young people develop high levels of commitment to corporations if they see that their parents were really, really badly laid off after 10 or 20 years of hard work for a company? Okay, it's a very logical thing. So major indications in research that this kind of commitment, which they refer to in the research as normative commitment, is practically disappearing. It's non-existent anymore. Another topic which I worked some in terms of worker unions, worker conditions, how the change in technology is happening in factories, for example. Again, this is a major trend in Hungary, definitely, but I think globally as well, that there's a major issue with the representation of workers' interests. Okay, they are really not involved in decisions that are fundamentally changing their life conditions. There are some countries which are more lucky. I think a lot of Croatians probably work in Germany. Maybe in Germany there's a little bit better situation, but also in Germany I think it's getting worse. And if you come to places like Hungary, it's not good at all. Even if we have EU laws, the EU laws are not followed. Okay, so I worked in a factory in which there were really, really very harmful health conditions for workers, and nobody cared, right? Because just the survival of the factory was more important. Then this is not really my table, but there's a lot of economists who are writing about the issue with wages, and I'm sure those of you who are economists are familiar with this. There's a major problem here. It is a very, very bad business now to actually work, and it's increasingly worse and worse. It's much better for anybody to do investment and get your money through, maybe in Croatia, a lot of you, rent a place or something like that. That seems to be a better business than doing actual work, and it's deteriorating quickly. We see in the United States, middle-class wages have not increased in decades. Life conditions are getting really bad. You probably have seen, there are movies about, for example, California. Lots of people have jobs in which their salary is not enough to even pay for the very, 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 very worst living place, okay? So they have a salary and they live in the place, they work in the place, but they have to live in their cars and everything. So there's a major problem that you work somewhere in a full-time job and you cannot even provide the very basics of your livelihood with that. This is a big danger. If you look at Hungary, for example, in Budapest, I don't know exactly what happened in Croatia. For you, probably tourism is a major factor also in Budapest, but so it's complicated issues. It's becoming a problem if in Hungary in 6 years, housing prices have doubled and salaries only increased 30 or 40%. That's a problem. That's an issue. That's going to lead to a major loss of life quality. So there are disappearing jobs, professions. Just very quickly, if you're interested, Erik Brynjolfsson is an interesting author to read. There are pessimistic people, there are optimistic people. Some people think that we are really not going to have jobs and we are going to all live in virtual worlds if we are allowed to live further. Some people think there's going to be a lot of new jobs created that we don't even have a clue what these will be. And this is going to require a lot of retraining and competence development. But definitely, even the optimistic people say that there's going to be a transformation period. So there's going to be a period in which millions, hundreds of millions of people will have no jobs and they will not be yet trained for the maybe available new jobs. So what's going to happen with this bill? That's probably one of the reasons why there's so much discussion today about things like universal basic income, because they have no idea what they are going to really do with this kind of situation, even temporarily. And what we see, another partly good, partly bad development is this widely spread, location-free, globally available jobs. This is going to create great competition. We are going to compete with people working for our jobs from India, from home. It's absolutely possible. It's of course giving a lot of people opportunities. So it's from one side, for many people, maybe giving them a lot of opportunities. However, there are tendencies indicating that these jobs are very often simplified to such a basic element of the job which is hardly meaningful anymore, right? So it might give somebody in the developing world a better chance to earn a better living, but it's not going to be an incredibly meaningful job that he's going to or she's going to be able to perform. Okay, so these are some of the major trends, and we see that there's a lot of issues going on here. And we have a responsibility, I think, if you look at the social doctrine of the church, or if you look at the compendium of the social doctrine, it specifically states that there's lots of new things coming on. We don't understand them fully. And the church says we have the responsibility. If you're Catholic, if you're Christian, if you work with human resource management, economics, this is your responsibility to be part of this discourse and work on it and figure out how can we do this in a Christian way. This is our responsibility. This is one potential meaning for our lives here. So how can we proceed towards the common good through good work? I love this expression, through good work. And Friedrich Schumacher has used this, not just creating any work, but creating good work, quality-wise good work. And for the understanding of that, I think what's the best is the Catholic anthropological and ethical foundation. And there's a lot in contemporary management literature which is connected to that. They are not saying, of course, that they are connected to that necessarily, but a lot of them you can recognize that it's connecting to that. This one actually is coming from a Catholic university. Here you have Pérez López's model of motivation. And the idea here, I assume most of you are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of need model of motivation. And this is what most people have in their head. But I think Pérez López's model is much more accurate and much more Christian and Catholic, because many managers think that if I have a worker who is needing money for food, basic shelter, these are the levels of needs, very low levels of needs that are fundamental for a person, then I don't really have to care about higher levels because they are not activated yet. Somehow, somebody who is living on the streets cannot really be activated by creativity or morality or this kind of approach. This is not really how Maslow meant it, but many people continue apply it in this way. I think, the pyramid is not a very good probably symbol, but it really stuck in the mind of people. So I tried to put in another graphic to indicate that a more accurate understanding of the human person and drives and motivation is multidimensional. That we have it parallelly to each other. So even if you meet somebody on the street, or if you meet a factory worker, a very low-skilled factory worker, or if you meet a university professor or a software engineer, whatever, it doesn't matter. All of them, as human beings, have these drives in them. These transcendent drives are not unique to those people who already have nice flats and friends and everything. Transcendent drives in us are universal. Every human being has them. And if it's pushed down, if it's somehow covered by mud, then your responsibility as a leader, as a manager, is to help these people to open it up and rediscover it again. Because it's in us. We know this for sure, that it's in every human being. Just to give you an example, because later on I'm going to show you about this, some ideas. I worked in Hungary with student groups in research projects, in NGOs who help people try to have homes for homeless people. Had an MBA student from the US who was a US veteran and tried to do something for veterans who were homeless back in California. And this same idea, if somebody is homeless, it doesn't mean that he fundamentally just needs a shelter and food. No. It's not that simple. He probably needs even more a smile, a shake of the hands, something to do good. Yeah, maybe that's one idea. If you think about your church communities, the parishes, something which is I think is it's a big temptation, and we need to be very careful. Sometimes we love to be good. Sometimes we are even jealous to let others do good because we want to do all the good. No, we shouldn't just let the homeless so that we can give them food and we can feel good about ourselves. Why don't we invite them so that we let them do something good? Because they need that. They need their dignity. They need the opportunity so that they can also do something good. And I would like to show you examples about that, which I really fall in love with when I met. Okay, so this is about just the multi-dimensional nature of our human existence. And many of you know Sister Helen Alford, and we learned a lot from her over the years in Hungary, in Keteg. And this is not exactly her model, but this is a figure I have found which indicates the idea of Sister Helen Alford. They wrote together a book with Michael Norton in 2004, Integral Human Development, that we have all these dimensions and they are equally important that they get developed. And the idea is really that if you don't develop in your work in just one of the dimensions, then it's like a car, and you have the wheels of the car, and if there's a bump, then you're not going to be able to go from Split to Hungary if I have a bump, right? So I need all the parts of the wheel. Okay, so this is actually, if I can say good news, this kind of thinking and approach. I've started to show this in my classes, but non-Christian colleagues of mine are showing to their students, and they are discussing and talking about this. So this is very well received by people. My students, my colleagues, they understand it. They talk about it, even though they don't know it's really coming from Catholic social teaching, but they use it and they believe in it. So it's great news. But there is something, this is about the multidimensionality. I want to talk now about the dynamics. The dynamics, how should we look at it if we are managers, the dynamic development of our people. And here's a great quote, which I have here in the original German and also in English. And as you see, Goethe is talking about something which I think is very important. If you meet somebody, like a factory worker, like somebody on the street, like us, with full of faults and mistakes and sins, if you take the person and handle like he is on that level, you actually are probably going to push the person. If you want to lift the person up, you have to assume the very best he could be, his potential, and treat it like him. And Goethe, I think, wasn't particularly Christian or anything, but I think that's a very humanistic, good approach. And this is something that in positive psychology, they have taken over. Viktor Emil Frankl and then the positive psychology movement with Seligman and so on. They use this very well now. So if you're interested in a good direction of, or relatively good, at least, direction of psychology, I think much better than Freudian psychology, positive psychology, I think, is a very good track. I don't know how familiar you are with Martin Seligman and these ideas, because this is actually, this is now the psychology which is building on the virtue ethics approach. You know, they literally quote Aristotle. They are not going to go back to Aquinas so easily, but yes, they are going to quote all the time Aristotle. And I'm not going to get into that, but this is a very good, very practical approach with the PERMA model, but there are advanced new models as well in positive psychology. If you're interested, please check this out for yourself. And I promised you I want to bring some gifts from Hungary. I know from my international students that Mihály Csikszentmihalyi is very famous in Hungary. Many of my international students have not heard of him. He's a key figure in positive psychology from Hungary. The theory of flow, this idea that you can become one with an activity, forget about all your troubles, you know, forget about the sense of time. This feeling of the optimal experience of flow, this is developed by Mihály Csikszentmihalyi, and I think it's also very, very important concept. So if you're interested, it's also a good author to check out and read some of his books. Another book that I would maybe recommend you to read from the last few decades, probably the most celebrated book on motivation, is Daniel Pink's, who's talking about importance of autonomy, mastery, purpose, meaning. Again, we have here in the mainstream of motivational literature, purpose, meaning, and that's the reason why lots of big corporations are actually very much looking into the opportunities, sometimes not so genuinely, but they are looking into the opportunities to design jobs with more purpose and meaning in them. Now, so I got to what I promised, that I want to share with you a few positive examples. How much time I have? 10 minutes? 8 minutes? Something like that? 8? Okay, speed it up. So one thing, as you see here, I wanted to bring here a government example as well. I will have not much time, but it's quite interesting, and you know, Hungary is very often criticized, and there's certainly validity in that. We have a lot of things which are not going well, but there are some things which happen really, really well, and I wanted to show you this one. I don't know how applicable this is to Croatia or other countries, but we had, for example, a major issue in Hungary with unemployment, 2010, and for us, we have a large Roma population, okay? Roma, Gypsy people, very many of them, okay? Maybe 10 or even 20% of the population, in some areas even 50%. And major problem of, sometimes we have towns, 2 generations, nobody has ever worked in the whole town, okay? It was a major problem. And the left liberal governments have not done any efforts to create jobs, just social welfare. And for this reason, we had almost like a pre-Civil War or public unrest situation, because working poor, so poor people who were working very hard for the little money, they were very angry with the Roma population or unemployed population who were just living on welfare. It was really a growing tension. So it was really massive. It was a downward spiral. It could have got really bad. But something happened in Hungary, which is, I think, inspired by Catholic social doctrine, and it's very good. They have introduced not a perfect, but a very interesting public jobs creation program. So what you see on this map is in 2015, new jobs, over 90% of new jobs in these counties, for example, these 2, they were created by this public. Imagine, over 90% public jobs. There's major issues, all these towns, nobody working, public jobs created for them. And what happened is that Hungary is 10 million people. In 10 years, we have 1 million extra jobs. 1 million more people work in Hungary than they used to work. Okay? 1 million. And this huge confrontation between the Roma population and the Hungarian population, especially working poor, disappeared. There's hardly any. There's no talk about, because a huge majority of the Roma population is working in Hungary now in these programs. Okay, if you see these programs, some of them are not so good because people are collecting trash and sometimes they are just standing, but it's still better than watching the TV the whole day. But some of the programs are really, really amazing. Like they grow vegetables and fruits and they give this to the children in this community. So it's really meaningful, really environmental, close, and it's really helping them learn competencies so they can also grow their food at home. Really, really excellent programs, some of them, not all of them. And what was good for Hungary, around 2018, we started to have a booming economy and a scarcity of jobs. And even these not so good jobs have been sufficient to bring people back to this capacity to pick up a job later on. So we have now really almost close to full employment in Hungary. Yeah? We have now people from many places coming in because even our Roma population is almost close to full employment. Yeah? But what you need to see here is that maybe areas for development I will talk about here is that those people who have serious physical and mental health problems, especially addiction, very bad news. Hungary is #1 in alcoholism in the whole world, okay? Especially men. Women are not so bad, but men, the #1, even worse than Russia now, okay? This is a problem, and if you have people who have these really major, just simple public work scheme is not going to help. You need additional additional structures for that. Okay, I'm going to move on because I want to show 2 more examples. Napraforgo, public benefit company. This is a company which is doing this what I have just mentioned. They are helping people with disabilities, not necessarily addiction, but that is a difficult one, but all sorts of mental and physical health problems. They give them very personalized help. So not like a government program, but really deep psychological support, helping them to find these jobs. And this company, as a public benefit company, has been in Hungary incredibly important. Lots of thousands of people have found a job with their help. Maybe one thing that I would like to highlight here, if somebody is struggling deeply and you help this person to find a job, that's great. I've made interviews with them. It's a huge change of life quality. But if you let them again lose their job, it's terrible. You know, they fall even much deeper. Okay, so you need to be very careful that you never do this to anybody. You don't lift up and then let them fall. So if you are in open employment, this company is working now on never to do this anymore. Have their employment opportunities also in these temporary periods when there is lack of work. And the final one, just very quickly, Gawad Kalinga from the Philippines. Has anybody heard of this one? It's interesting to look. It's an amazing organization, an NGO, and what they do, just in a nutshell, they are helping the poorest people in Manila, Philippines, homeless or almost homeless people to get a housing. But how they do it? Not like my Hungarian friends or my American friends or preparing a nice house and give it to them. They go to the communities and tell them, you know, we are going to start building these little tiny houses. Do you want to come and build it with us? And they go to 100 homeless people and maybe 10 come with them. Yeah, maybe with their families. So they go there 20 or 40 weekends and they build the house with their own hands. And only those who have built it till the very end, they get to move in. And it's a whole different story. They get a community, they get a dignity, especially men. These men living on the streets with their families, after they have built a tiny little house with their own hands, they have their dignity back. And these people don't get back to become homeless, whereas my Hungarian friends have a big issue with that. This is an amazing company, and if you're interested, check it out. And they are now working with very complex approaches, building communities, new forms of education for the kids of these people actually to become social entrepreneurs and so on. An issue there, but I don't have time to talk about this, how all the big companies now want to cooperate with them, and it's a credibility issue because Shell and whatever wants to put their flags for, but it's a credibility issue. So to finish on time, conclusions for the things I've try to cover here. Technology, as Brynjolfsson says, is not destiny, but also our Catholic social doctrine says that the future of work is not destiny. We are not believing in that. We are called to be co-workers of truth by the Creator, and we need to be engaged in shaping what kind of world is going to be around us in the area of the future of work. So nobody can tell, because it's in the development of shaping, and it's going to depend on how many of us get actively engaged in this process. And what I want to highlight here is that I think, I haven't read obviously everything, but the very best in this is the Catholic social teaching. There's I think nothing better in terms of common good and anthropological perspective than the Catholic teaching. And what I can see, and if you're interested, read, for example, Michael Porter from Harvard Business School, what they try to do, okay? Because the for-profit corporate sector is very massively trying to shape the future of work. But you can predict that they want to shape it in a way that gives them even more power than what they have today. Okay? Check out, for example, him. What we need to do, we need to have governments, local communities, civil initiatives, social entrepreneurs, churches to get engaged. Not let the future of work be decided by large corporations fundamentally or only motivated by money. We, the civil society, the people, need to dream about the future and engage for accomplishing it. Okay. And I think the church is a major contribution here. Well, I think I'm within the time, hopefully. Sorry if I was a minute too long. Thank you very much. Thank you.